the huge problem that F1 is facing with the FIA. Formula 1 has got a big old problem at the moment with the FIA, which needs to be addressed, or we could see yet more controversy. Obviously, it's pretty clear that F1 isn't the most consistent sport in the world, and quite rightly so. It's an incredibly difficult sport to police. But the FIA isn't exactly making it any easier either. After the absolute SpongeBob's running around trying to blow out fires that was Abu Dhabi last year, the FIA's new president Mohammed bin Sulayem decided to make a few changes that aim to make life as a race director a little bit easier. Which it absolutely has, with the race directors taking it in turns for the races. Either Niels Wittich or Eduardo Freitas can sit back at home, put their feet up and simply watch the carnage unfold from the comfort of their own home. However, this then brings up a big question around consistency when it comes to making decisions. The combination of ever-changing rules and a constant switching up of people enforcing them really isn't the best foundation for a sport where there are already so many unknowns. I was under the impression when the FIA promised its major shake-up after the end of last year that there would be at least a couple of race directors who would work together to ensure all the loopholes were filled and to essentially support each other, not take it in turns. Not only this, but there is also a constant rotation of stewards too. The key parties involved in making decisions from race to race about an incident are ever changing. So how on earth will there be consistent decisions made when the people making the decisions are different and will have their own interpretation of the rules? Now, whilst this allows them to share responsibility and probably blame as well, there is the argument that this creates more problems than it solves. Let me give you a few examples. In Monaco, Freitas and F1 teams went to war over pit exit markings because the race director had brought the rules from last year instead of this year. Or how about in Austria? Sergio Perez had to wait until the end of Q3 to be told he'd been disqualified from Q2 due to the steward's inability to come to a decision. But above all, the different interpretations of the new overtaking rules is a prime example of the problem F1 faces. In a nutshell, if a driver on the inside of a corner doesn't have a significant amount of car alongside their opponent, they don't need to be given space. On the other hand, if a driver on the outside of a corner isn't marginally ahead of their opponent coming to the exit of the corner, they don't need to be given space. This makes sense on paper, right? Well, apparently not, as these rules weren't exactly followed at the British Grand Prix, where drivers were pushed off track and even cut corners to gain positions. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed what went on at the British Grand Prix. I thought it was amazing racing, the commentary as well was just brilliant. However, it's not what's written down on paper. Then when drivers like Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso confronted the race director about this in the drivers' meeting in Austria, they didn't want to talk about it. After a lengthy conversation that apparently went round in circles, Vettel got up and left the meeting and got a €25,000 suspended fine as a result. If these inconsistencies continue, I doubt this will be the last time we see this. It's sad to think that when the new FIA president first took over, they promised to learn from the mistakes made last season and especially from the final race in Abu Dhabi. An in-depth reform of the entire organisation was meant to get us back on track and ensure that we ironed out all the problems from last year, making the transition to these new regulations as smooth as possible. They also promised to introduce a virtual race control room that is kind of like VAR in football, giving the race directors additional off-site help if they should need it using the most modern technologies. But only God knows if that's working or not. You'd suspect not if they weren't able to see Sergio Perez leave the track on his Q2 lap in Austria. So after everything the FIA promised us at the start of this season, what we've actually got is just a lot of confusion and a very frustrated grid of drivers. There you have it, the problem F1 faces with the FIA. What do you think to the current setup of race directors and stewards? What would you change? Let us know in the comment section below.